join in and share pieces because I'm sure I'll miss some of it. We talked about the middle school academy and STEM enrollment. So STEM at the middle school is a pretty big program where a lot of kids have been enrolling, and it seems to be kind of in demand, and that the community seems to really appreciate that RHAM has done that. And then the next effort, the middle school academy, and as we had the conversation about the middle school academy, it took a little bit of a turn from where I imagined it would go, and I think both Rich and Danny posed a question that was kind of intriguing. Well, how important is this personalized learning? And is it most important that we make sure options that we know are excellent for students are there, or is it retaining the team structure of the middle school? So so it was really stepping back and kind of saying, what is the biggest, most important thing? So that was a very interesting conversation about wanting to give students choice, and Rich shared a lot of what he saw at the CAPE conference around choice for students, and that it's very much what schools are doing right now with specific standards that students need to meet and achieve. But nonetheless, it's done through a format where students are hopefully more engaged and more interested while they're still meeting the same outcomes for writing and reading, and it's still standards based. So that was interesting. And then it was shared by the administration, some of the community conversations that have occurred and the feedback from the community. At that point, they were waiting to know how many families were interested in the middle school academy. And if I got that email, I apologize. I don't know what the updated number was.
31.
Okay, 31 are interested right now.
I think we're up to 33.
Okay.
In the academy?
Okay.
The inquiry academy?
So, yeah, so in any case, that's at 33, and one of the things that we discussed in the meeting is it's a difficult time of year. I think the deadline for submission was last Tuesday, and there are concerts at schools, as everybody knows, and family obligations and things, and so I think it was a soft deadline, is what was said.
STEM was, I think the due date. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the inquiry, right?
Yeah, yeah.
STEM was later.
Yeah, no, because the middle school academy, the more inquiry model, as you said, is to try to determine if it would be enough students for a team. And, as I said, some members of the committee said, well, what if there weren't, then what? Which is, it's an interesting kind of conversation, kind of like I think when we had some of the conversations around, I always go back to the strategic plan, but around the strategic plan, just the stepping back, big picture kinds of questions, begin with the end in mind, and so on. So then, I'm sorry.
If I could just comment.
Of course.
On that point, and I think it was the threshold of what, 40? I think we needed in order for this to happen. It's a tremendous investment of time and resources for the district, and I think what the question was, and I don't want to speak for Rich, but I think we're on the same lines that there are certain staffing and cost commitments in the team-based model that have to set this 40-person limit technically to make it work. And I think the question we had was, if the investment is that important, do we lose the opportunity to get 33 or 35 students for the sake of saving the team-based model in the middle school? Do we look at a junior high school model that makes it possible for us to bring in this particular type of scenario with the academy and so forth without sacrificing time and investments?
Add to that.
Yeah, well, it was just mostly that we all thought that this academy is incredibly important going forward, and we need to do what we can to make sure it happens, and not necessarily go under the old deal methodology.
Okay.
In a conversation with Michael Cervisi, he's going to be going to the Central Elementary Schools after the first of the
talked about at the meeting, possibly doing a grid where there would be bubbles in so a parent could know as well as a student what the difference between the programs are. Because it's pretty clear, I think, when you have the traditional program in STEM, but then you start adding one more, the middle school academy, that's a little, it's amazing, but I think for a parent, it could be, do all three, do students need to meet standards? And we talked about doing something like that. That would be a guide to help parents, because I could imagine that some parents, it would be an unknown and they would want that kind of information. Because I know one of the things we also talked about at the meeting is there was some confusion when personalized learning was talked about last year, and some just amazing students were very against it. And they were seniors at the time last year, very, very bright. And I think they heard some things maybe that some were true, but maybe some weren't accurate. And so they really, I think, were defending what is in place, which is fine. But it's to try to, you talked about trying to get rid of some of the misconceptions possibly, or clarifying things, or making things really accessible. So nice. So then the community conversations, as Dr. Szymanski participated in with parents, and there were some questions asked. And then we also talked about a STEM track in the high school. And there again, as that conversation went on, someone pointed out, and that might have been Dave, I can't recall, but that many students actually at RHAM take quite a lot of math and science, and with how STEM is now going to be defined, many students who are seniors now even would qualify for what is this STEM track. And we talked about, could there be some kind of recognition of that, to be honoring the work, and that students have taken pretty rigorous math and science classes, and I see how much homework there is and how much work, and these kids are working really hard, and they're very smart. And so we talked about just right along, honoring students who are taking some of the most difficult course load too. There was an interesting conversation there that some kids have figured out exactly how to, my words, game the system, and figure out that taking a study hall might be better for their GPA than one more extra, whatever difficult class. And we talked about, well, actually looking and saying this student really extended themselves, and it was all about learning, and and how can we as a community, because we are so proud of our young adults, how can we really recognize that and support that in some meaningful way? As Danny really pointed out, that could even perhaps help with college acceptance, because it's very competitive out there right now. It's brutal. It just is. So we certainly want to do everything we can to recognize kids who are working hard and learning a lot. And then we spoke also some about the guidance report. So, Rich, Danny, Dave, where did I forget?
I think it was really good. I know you were talking about extending the due date on the apps for the Inquiry Academy. Has that been done?
Yes, it has, and that's why I said Dr. Struce is going to be visiting the semi-elementary schools to see if there's any additional interest, given the fact that with the concerts, the press of the holidays, and some.
That's
One thing that's related to that
consideration.
is the STEM deadline is much further out.
Isn't it?
And if those people that don't get accepted into STEM, they actually might want to come to the academy, right? So there's a little scheduling problem there.
Yeah, but I mean, I think in just 1 week, you went from 12 apps to 33. That's quite a growth. That's encouraging. I don't think you'll have a problem getting.
Well, I think right now with just the crush of the holidays and people being busy with other things.
We're done for that one anyway.
Yeah, I think you'll definitely. So now, if you get more than 40 people interested, is there going to be everybody who's interested gonna be accepted, or is there a?
We can run it comfortably up to a little over 50.
Okay, great, excellent. Yeah, maybe like, yeah, you know, what Judy had said, you know, having like an FAQ or, you know, something like that would be really good for, you know, some of the misconceptions that are going around.
And we think that the person in contact will help.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I know that would probably be really good for the town.
Any questions for Judy?
I'd just like to say though, and I think the whole committee, and Mrs. Shea was there as a member of the public, and when she left, she also shared a positive comment. I think, you know, RHAM is running on a tight budget, and it's just pertinent and impressive, I guess, that you're really trying to do all of this great work, and it's really the right work, and so thanks so much for doing it.
Anything else? Is that it?
Yes.
That brings us to negotiations. Bob or Carol, from the last meeting?
I have a discussion about relative to negotiations in executive session.
Okay.
Because we need to take a look at some of the agreements.
Athletic and extracurricular activities committee?
We did have a meeting. We did have a meeting.
Finance did not meet either. So that brings us to student representatives.
The major student activity from the past month, the Drama Club's production of Little Shop of Horrors, I think went quite well. I say that both as a member of the cast, but also as a student. I think the energy was great, and there was a great reception from the community and our classmates and teachers. I know my English teacher saw it on Thursday and Saturday because she loved it so much. So the efforts of the now departed Mr. Gadwa and Miss Emerson should definitely be commended for their hard work and many hours spent after school, and the dozens of students. And beyond the normal student complaints about the internet speed, I think that's it from our side.
Well, expand on that?
Just in general, the slow internet connectivity is an issue, not just on cell phones, which students complain about, but also on the laptops they use in class. For example, in my sociology class last week, Mrs. Ludendorff has really embraced the Google Classroom and Google Schools initiative, and we were trying to log on, and that was second period, so at 8:20 or so, we got the computers, and it wasn't until about 8:45 that we were actually able to access the document with our instructions. That's a little bit of an extreme example, but there's always 10, 15 minutes lost in class typically to trying to log on, not only to the computers, but then onto the internet to actually find our assignment.
So was that time, as you said, logging onto the system or actually getting to the website?
It was both. I'd say in that case, it was about actually 50-50 getting on the laptops. I think we were actually on the ones that had been purchased before the most recent set, so granted these were a bit older, but then once finally we were able to, double click on the Google Chrome icon, it still took a while for that to load up, and then to go to classroom.google.com, enter our information, and then access the Google Doc that she put up that had instructions about our assignment. And that was unfortunate. For obvious reasons, the instructional time loss.
Is this a problem you're seeing throughout the school?
Yes, it's frequent, been going on several years now, but I wouldn't say that it's increased necessarily over the past couple months, but I think students are noticing it more as the school transitions to, the Google School and using online materials much more often. It's being noticed more.
It's interesting because I know they've done a significant upgrade.
Yeah, we were just told that it's working really, really, really well.
Do you ever use the network parts or the, what did we just,
Yeah, you just said they use the.
yeah, but what is the thing that goes, I'm just blanking right now, what's the thing that goes up quickly? It's
Chrome.
Chromebooks? Do those,
We don't have.
We don't have.
That's,
Right,
that's
that's
very
in the
middle
middle
school.
school.
would those go up much more,
Yes.
more quickly? Because I've heard that from middle school teachers and other, in fact, you know, just a quick example of that is, one of my daughters is in 8th grade and she goes to the high school for math, and she took one of the assessments on her Chromebook, and everybody noticed that, how much more quickly the Chromebooks were up versus the, I guess, the laptops or netbooks or whatever.
My father owns a personal Chromebook, and you can see from the get-go, those do log on faster, so they're definitely the right
Is there a
choice.
compatibility issue with the Chromes that makes it easier? to
No,
log
it's
into?
got a little overhead.
I was gonna say, the operating system doesn't take the
Yeah.
capacity that a regular full
So
amount.
is it the equipment or is it bandwidth or both for the other machines?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, you know, one thing I
Sounds
would
like
check
you need a
is that
report.
the Chromebooks are, check that the Chromebooks are logging onto the private network as opposed to the public network. Make sure. Because there's a secure network that they should be on because they're assets of the school,
Right.
as opposed to the one where every kid is going on with their cell phone, because they're different networks and they should be segregated.
Well, there's two important pieces to this. One is that Bob's suggestion would be to have technology department provide an update for the board in terms of where we stand now. But two, probably even more important is as you go into budget discussions, to talk seriously about what the infrastructure needs are from a technology perspective, what's needed to make this thing happen, and what those costs are.
And that's why we mentioned, this is the last year for you guys, so we want to take advantage of those things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't think the, mentioned the problem, 20, 15-minute delays.
Right.
Yeah,
So which is critical.
Yeah, that was interesting, because I know he gave us a presentation on significant changes or upgrades to the network. So maybe we could check just to make sure
I'm
they're
gonna
using
have
the
to
right
double
network.
check, and then, because, we'll just double check and especially with it.
That can make a huge difference.
I think it does warrant mentioning it's kind of touch and go. Definitely taking half an hour to log on was a bit of an extreme example. 10 to 15 minutes is a little more common, but there are definitely some days that are better than others. I honestly don't know much about technology, so I don't know if that has to do with the volume of people trying to log on at once or other issues, but some days you can start what you need to do within 5 minutes, some days it's 10, 15 minutes. But there are delays that I'm sure is a mix of the older Orange Card laptops and network.
What room specifically?
In the instance that I was just talking about, that was sociology, which was 130, I want to say, social studies. But it's, the delays have happened in most everywhere.
Well, I can tell you, I just ran a speed test, and on the public network at least, it's 1.82 megabits, which is kind of really slow.
Yeah.
So,
Especially with nobody here.
Right.
Imagine what it is with, a couple thousand kids.
it's barely better than DSL.
Exactly.
That's a serious concern to me because I know that 10 or 15 minutes of class time is
Yeah,
significant.
that's a big
I'm
one.
guessing most of that really is the older laptops and actually logging into the domain.
Well,
and stuff,
it-
but
That's part of it, I think from a bandwidth perspective, it's not just how many, but what are people doing? If you have heavy video use, you're killing your broadband versus people who are just looking at text.
Right, and if you're sharing, if you're on the private network versus the public network,
Right.
you're competing with kids watching YouTube videos.
And staff,
And, right,
And also begs the question, are we monitoring this network sufficiently?
Right, exactly, to know when those peak periods are and what we need to do with them.
sounds like a report, Bob.
Jack, the other thing I know that did happen that I wanted you to just comment on quickly, I think since the last meeting, was Model UN.
Yes, Model UN was a big success. I had the honor and distinction of serving as Connecticut Model UN's president. So that was a great experience on my end, and I've been involved in Model UN since freshman year, so it was a nice culmination of everything. But RHAM was quite successful. We also had another student member who was Sharon Van Meter, was the chairperson, I believe, of one of the committees at the simulation that took place at the University of Hartford. And we also had a large increase in the number of students that joined this year. I'd been a little concerned last year because it seemed to be majority kids in my grade. But this year, I think Mr. Joseph and Burgess really did outreach efforts to try and recruit more freshmen and sophomores to keep it going, and I think that's very promising because it's a personal favorite club of mine, and I think a real great facet of RHAM's offerings.
Jackie, if I could just add to Kevin's question there, can you comment on National Honor Society induction ceremony, because that was a very important community event, I would say, that some of the invitees you guys had. So.
Yes, that was another great event that I also had the distinction of being president of. And we had State Senator Ostin, whose name is brought up a lot here, who spoke, and also a video sent from U.S. Senator Murphy, who unfortunately could not visit, but he sent us a very nice personalized 3-4 minute video. We also had a large incoming class of juniors and 3 seniors. I believe it was close to 48, which was very similar to last year. So we have almost 100 members of RHAM National Honor Society, which is, to my understanding, a school record. For comparison, Bacon Academy brought in about 23 this year. So I think that really speaks to the, how well RHAM prepares us, because these students are getting in from national standards, not ones necessarily set by the school. So that event was very successful, and I think a lot of fun, and I'm glad to see the incoming class of NHS members.
Thank you, David. Harrison, do you have anything else to add?
No. Oh, yeah, I guess continuing on the social studies strand, the mock trial team, which Jack and I are also members of, is one of the 2 teams is moving on to states.
I actually went to the Little Shop Bars, and it was excellent. It was very, very good.
It was a lot of fun.
We liked it so much that we went online and saw a couple of the, I think the one from the 60s and the newer one. It was excellent, very good. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brings us to facilitators, the Educational Foundation, Dave.
Yes, there was an estate planning seminar that was in the beginning of December, pretty well attended. I'm not sure that we have another meeting scheduled yet.
East Con, Judy?
I don't have an update.
Kate?
Caves in their down period following the Cape Cast conference. The next thing to look out for, though, early in 2016 will be the area legislative breakfast that they host. And I would certainly encourage that we have at least 1 or 2 members of this board attend. Typically, they are attended by a couple of members of the General Assembly. So it's a chance to talk to not just our own representatives, but other people who sit on key committees relative to education. It's a really positive way to interact and provide our direction for
That's an,
This one.
okay. That brings us to the chair report. One item on here is acknowledgement of departing board member, and on behalf of the board, I want to thank Kevin, not only just for the last couple of weeks, but for the last 1.5 or 2 years as vice chair. It wasn't just meeting fill-ins, there was a lot of soundboarding and items to support from the chair, which was extremely helpful, and I want to thank you on behalf of the board for your time and your effort. Oh, is it? Sorry. And so with that, it's a big surprise. Grateful appreciation for the service on the regional district number 8 Board of Education and the children of Andover, Eagle, and Marlboro from 2013 to 2015. Kevin? Thank you. Just a few quick comments. Committee appointments. If you can let me know what committees you're interested in serving on, so we can get those out. We have newer members cycling in, and has he been selected replacement for county chair's not even called yet, but
Not officially yet.
Not
officially?
Yeah, the Republican Town Committee has selected a endorsed candidate that has to go before the board of selectmen to be ratified.
Is there roughly a timeline as to when? Is like next week or
Probably
something?
January again. Yeah, your next meeting you should be considering, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
Which
so
is-
it'd be in January. It'd be before the
January
January
7th.
board meeting here.
Okay.
January 7th.
And then the retreat and you have to complete the superintendent's review. Did we select dates for that?
Did not nail down dates.
So I'll send out an email for dates on that. That brings us to item number 9, action items. Approval of minutes of the November 16, 2015 regular meeting and minutes of December 1st, 2015 special meeting, which are enclosures 9.1A and 9.1B.
We discussed after you have the motion.
Yeah, motion.
Yeah.
Any motion to approve?
Motion made by Dave, is there a second? Second by Manny, discussion?
I'm sorry, is it Karen? Karen, I just gave Karen something that I suggested she strike out regarding a comment I made where it appeared as though, or one could read it that way, that I thought we had too many guidance counselors, when in fact, if anybody's heard me, they know that I think we need more guidance counselors. So I just wanted that, just for clarification, that changed, so.
Any objections to the change? I agree with that.
One correction on John's name.
What page?
Public comment. It's JOHN.
For which meeting?
The first.
Regular meeting?
Regular meeting.
Under public comment.
John Jepson?
John Jepson.
John Jepson should be J-O-H-N.
J-O-H-N.
Thank you, Rich. Any objections to changing that? Any other changes? Hearing those, I ask for a motion to accept as amended. All those in favor, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any, one abstention? Or two abstentions? 3 abstentions. Name, Kevin, and myself. Personnel actions, there are none under 9.2. 9.3, reports. I need a motion to receive and file the following documents: the levy payment schedule 9.3A, cash flow reports 9.3B, student activity report 9.3C, monthly budget report enclosure 9.3D, cafeteria report 9.3, curriculum instruction assessment instructional technology report 9.3F, student discipline 9.3G, sick day report 9.3H, special education report 9.3I. So moved. Motion made by Manny, seconded by Kevin. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor to accept, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Brings us to item 9.4, which is a first reading of policies of 9130, 9141, 9170, 9210, 9215, 9230, 9240, 9270, 9314, 9315, 9430. Enclosure 9.4, first reading.
First?
First reading.
No, I think mine would be 14 or 15 or both three second.
The agenda has it all as first reading.
They're all bunched in as first reading.
Yeah, they're posted as first reading, so you're not gonna be able to vote on them.
And I wanted that 9210, 9215, and 9230 were not reviewed by the programs policy system.
Were they not? Were they not the last agenda?
No. No, these were stuff that we were taking out of the ones that are on this thing, that are gonna go into those, but we never,
I thought we talked about, I thought we got a discussion about some specific things.
right, we did because they were in the other policies that we are
Okay.
here, and that we said we need to move that over to the other policy. So these 3 policies we haven't reviewed in there.
Which ones were those, Rich?
9210, 9215, and 9230.
The duties were
review
Or
this.
Board of Ed, Vice Chair and Secretary.
What, Rich, what were you saying about 92, 10, 15, and 30?
We didn't review them in the policy subcommittee yet. There are changes due to stuff that we pulled out of other policies. We never got around to review.
Well, they're listed down this first reading, so when we get to the next committee, we can pull those out.
Yeah, I mean, you have the ability to pull them at that point. They can be represented for first reading if they're edited.
So,
So there's no action taken.
okay. That brings us, is there any questions on that? If not, we move on.
Just to note, there were a number of changes to those policies, so you should read them.
Okay, that brings us to 9.5, discussion and possible action regarding policy 6210, resident students not attending public schools, 9.5. Bob, you want to discuss this briefly, or?
Well, at one of the meetings, the board passed a policy, or tentatively approved a policy of having students who weren't enrolled in school not participating in clubs. At the previous meeting, the board was asked to go back to the policy committee. Policy committee had some discussion on it. They asked me to, to do some research and put polls of the surrounding districts, and that's included there for your information. And copies of both policies are there. And they've also included correspondence from the board attorney relative to non-students participating in clubs. So that's what we were asked to do, and it was indicated in the policy meeting that this would be further discussed by the board this evening.
Do you have a recommendation, Bob?
No, I think that the policy committee was really split on their own recommendation as to what to do as far as this was concerned.
So I guess if we were to get this moving, I guess we would need a motion, at least to start with, to, what is it, to accept 6210 as proposed.
There's two versions of it.
Yeah, let's,
Well, we picked, I think the reason why it came back is because when it got sent back to the policy subcommittee, there wasn't a vote to do anything with it, it just got sent back. So I would recommend that we actually vote on the proposal at hand, and if that fails, then it can go back and be amended as whatever the board wants it to be.
okay,
But until that happens, we really didn't have an action to take,
okay.
so that's why it's back.
Understood. So my question is then, do we need a motion to, because we have two 6210s, and there's 6,000 in instruction, right? One's very brief, which is the standing policy, right? Will not allow access to.
No, there is no
So it's
policy
not-
today.
The one that was presented is the one that really should be voted on, which was the short blanket.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion then for some, do we have a motion to adopt 6210, the short version for resident students not enrolled in or attending the public schools? Regional School District Number 8 public schools will not allow access to its regular educational programs or extracurricular activities held during the regular school day or after school. So motion made by Manny, is there a second? Rich, second. Discussion.
Your only clarification you want to make for the minutes is, it's the policy we're talking about is as reflected on page 3 of attachment 9.5.
Okay, thanks.
Now we know exactly what we're going to talk about.
Yes, Carol?
Yeah, I have some comments. And we had some discussion at the last board meeting. I'd like to just extend that. I think there were a number of us here that agreed at the time that we wanted to remain inclusive as a school. And, we're not a private school, we're not exclusive. We are a public school. And we serve people in our community. And that includes young people who are town residents, friends, neighbors, and their parents who are taxpayers. And I really feel that, for whatever reason, and there are multiple reasons why our students cannot or do not choose to attend the public school. But if they have a desire to be a part of, be a part of their community to that degree, even though it's limited after school or before school, which is what the other policy dictated. I really think that they should have a right to do that. and that we should allow it. We polled this, Bob polled the surrounding towns, and I guess my attitude was, well, I really don't think we need to pay attention to, you know, what all the other towns are doing. We have to decide what's best for our school. But it really pretty much was split down the middle. So, you know, that was interesting. And I really think that it also is an enrichment factor for not only the young people in our community who don't go to school here but want to, you know, participate in activities in town, but also for the people, for the students who are here too, that they get to be exposed to some students who go to other schools and have different experiences. And we're in the business of educating people. And if anything, we need to prepare them for going out into the world and meeting different people in different places. I also noticed in the package that was put in here that toward the end, and this, I don't think this was included in the last one. Let's tell you what page. There's administrative regulations. Was that in the previous package? I don't
Yes,
know.
it was.
It was. I guess I missed it. I got as far as the lawyer's letter and then I just stopped. But, yeah, that one I saw. But the general conditions for non-enrolled students' access to program activities and/or services. And if you read through that, I think it addresses a lot of the concerns that some people have about, you know, having students from other schools come in to our school. And Bob, could you explain how this would fit in terms of how a policy relative to
The way I see it working is that
outside students?
somebody who wanted to join the club who's not a
Could you
student.
speak in?
The way I see it working, for a student who would want to join a club who's not a student at the high school, I would request some sort of written request that they participate in it. And then I think that there's some issues around the person's being sure that they meet the health requirements of students entering school, and to be sure that the membership of that student in the organization would not create any adverse difficulties for the advisor. For example, a student that had been suspended from another district, would that person be a viable candidate for a club? I think that we would have to closely look at those, at the circumstances around that, and then make some sort of appropriate decision.
We can have a second motion, unrelated, semi-unrelated.
It's not good.
All right, right, I think I think I know where you're trying to get to. So from a process perspective, the motion on the table is for the policy that was presented previously. It's already been through a first reading. That policy as presented is the one that would exclude any and all non-attending students from it. All right, what I would suggest the process be is, based on the outcome of this vote, you'll have a pretty good feel for the collective board in terms of where they feel on the issue. If it is, in fact, a no vote for that policy, it's a pretty good indication that the board supports allowing not attending students in some way. And I would.
My plan was to ask for the motion right after this.
I don't think you can. I think because you're gonna have to have a first reading of that policy. So.
That wasn't where I was going.
Go ahead.
Okay.
We need to talk about this, but we have to have a
Lawyer's letter?
motion to talk about it.
Is that the lawyer's letter?
Yeah.
Well, the lawyer's letter was included in the background information.
Yeah, that's part of the attachment.
So you can-
You can talk about it. It's a factor in the decision. that we're
I
making.
know, the last line was saying we can't talk about it unless the board approves, we can talk about it.
As client privilege?
Yes.
Oh, that's a good.
Got it.
Yeah.
So,
If it's privileged information, then I would just ask respectfully that you not divulge it.
well, I want to make the motion that we can divulge it.
I was gonna suggest that the board members actually read it, and I hope everyone had a chance to read it, there's some very important information in there.
Yes, there is.
You know, not discounting anything that Carol said, but big opportunity for us to really incur some burden and some responsibilities, some legal actions that we are not prepared to do so as a board, and have the fiduciary responsibility to this district to protect those things. So again, be very clear about what you're about to vote on, and if you have not read it, I would suggest reading it quickly now, because it is important information.
I did read it, and I mean, I really appreciate what Carol said. You know, the area towns, it's split, because this is, you know, a situation where I can imagine there can be cases made for both, different policies we have. I know we have the shorter one on. I think, the words inclusive really stand out to me. And then the other words are resident students. We're talking about kids who live in our towns who their parents are paying taxes. These are, you know, citizens in our community. So I think that is really an important word for me, the other policy. And then the other piece is administration may permit. So, you know, that I think gives the administration the guidance or the ability to make that decision. And I think you're right, that's a privileged document, but I think there are interesting points in that. But I agree with Mrs. Shea.
I think that's the great matter, that's the problem.
I know.
To turn over to say the administration has the ability to do one or the other is the
Yeah.
problem.
I know.
The policy really needs to be clear. You know,
What-
and right now, there is an out. If a student is a resident who is not a member of this school, they can still participate if they have a PPE or whatever you call it, some sort of medical, you know, clearance to do so. So there is a way to do that, and it's been offered to some students already that are not part of this school. So there is something already in place legally, because by doing that, the student becomes, or I say that child becomes a student of RHAM. Where this way, opening it up to anyone that's not a student, I think you're really opening yourself up to some possible bad lawsuits here. So that's all I'll say. I'm not saying it's I'm not anti-community, I'm not anti-anything, it's just that, again, you gotta really protect what the school is and what we're trying to kind of keep here, so.
And, can I make a motion to table that motion until we revisit this other motion?
You can make a motion, okay?
I'll make a motion to table it until we discuss whether we can release this tournament.
A second to the motion? Second by Kevin, any discussion?
Only that I think we need to free ourselves up so we can actually talk about
Well, I was
this
gonna ask you when you see us doing that.
right now,
What do you mean right now?
right after this meeting, right after this motion gets tabled.
Now you confused me, Rich.
If we table the current motion, then we can bring up this motion that will allow us to and finish that.
So if this motion passes, you're gonna start another motion to be able to talk about.
Well, then we remove it from the table and we keep on talking about it. When have we tabled until?
There's a lot of tables open here.
Or if you want, we'll just make a motion to allow us to release the privilege of this document.
Well, it's already been shared, though, I don't understand.
Was it
a
public
document? Was it a public document?
Was it on the website, Bob?
It hasn't been on the website, but it's on the table, it's a public document.
Okay.
No, it's already been shared.
Then fire away.
Well,
You gotta call for the motion to table.
Motion.
Call the question.
Any more questions about?
Well, again, I don't know if we can talk about it, because to Rich's point, it specifically said we needed a vote before we could share this. As a
It's a
board.
public document now.
It is now, but it's too, so we violated the client privilege here, because it specifically says only the board as a whole may vote to share this information. And it's already shared, we never voted on it.
Right, that's distributed. So therefore, it's on the website too.
Right. So we're already violated, so now what?
Well, right now, we got to vote on Rich's motion. Do we want a motion to table this?
Call for
Any further, any further discussion on the motion to table?
I'm confused on the motion to table it.
What happens is we have a motion to approve the first, was it page 3, Kevin, of the handout?
Policies reflected on page 3 of the calendar.
Page 3 of attachment 9.5, which is 6210, participation is non-enrolled students, which is a motion which specifically says, for resident students not enrolled in or attending the public schools, the regional school district and grade public schools will not allow access to its regular educational programs or extracurricular activities held during the regular school day or after school. So that was the motion was made to accept that. We were discussing at that time. Rich made a motion to table it to another time so that we can take it off the table and discuss it. And I think Rich is anticipating that we're going to go to page 4 of item 9.5 and discuss the second one, which is the proposal of the same policy number, but it's almost.
No, it was not.
No, what you need,
We're going to go to that?
Yeah.
well, yeah, he's got some points that are reflected in there, so what he's doing is saying, in order for us to open up this conversation outside of the executive session, it's, regardless of precedent, the board still would have to formally vote to say, yes, we're willing to make this public information in order to discuss it in public forum. Otherwise, it can only be discussed
I
in
don't
executive
think the
session.
board has to do that, but it's not, it's public now.
Yeah,
I mean, it's public.
yeah, that's a good point.
Only the board as a whole may vote to waive the privilege, so regardless of where the document is posted, it was not posted with the authorization of the full board, so from a legal perspective, you
Let's get to the motion table first. If somebody wants to make a motion to release this, then they can do so. If not, we'll continue on with the agenda. So, all those in favor of Richard's motion to table, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion is tabled.
Okay,
So,
I'd like to enter a motion that the board waive attorney-client privilege for the legal information provided in section 9.5, starting on page 5.
What if we say no?
Hang on, starting on page 5 and going through page 7. Okay, second from Rich. Now discussion, so I can go into it a little bit. All right, so here's the thing, Chief. In looking at the information, there's nothing in there that's FERPA related. There's nothing that would violate or release any information about specific students. We needed this motion so we could have this conversation. What Rich is getting at is it discusses, what the document does do is it provides background from a legal perspective on what a board should or should not do. It provides counsel to us.
Yeah.
We don't have to divulge that if we don't.
I apologize, I don't mean this one thing, and I apologize, it's just that it's already public, so my point is, what if it was a hypothetical that probably is just a little intellectual exercise, but what if we said no, so.
But in respect to should we do it, because there was a specific legal opinion to the board, not about a specific incident or case, but it's just true legal advice to the board. They're saying in order for us to make it public, we would have to vote on it to make it a public document. So I think they're doing their due diligence, saying, I'm your lawyer, I'm telling you what to do. That information is protected to some degree under attorney-client privilege. So, but there is nothing, at least through what I read, that has anything specific to any particular student that would violate anyone else's rights here and compromise the board, as many suggest, in addition to other things, could expose the board to other potential liability.
What if we wanted to say no, it wouldn't become a non-public document.
So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to call a question.
All those in favor of making the legal advisory partial enrollment issue from the law firm or the attorney and Littlefield or Shipping Goodwin, say aye. Any opposed?
Yeah, I want to.
2 abstentions. Okay, motion passes.
Passes. Now you can make the comments
We
back. We can
can
pull
always
it.
make a motion to return from the table the previous.
Policy 62.
policy.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Rich, seconded by Kevin to bring the motion back to the table on the original proposal of 6210. Go Yeah, okay, all those in favor?
This is so we can discuss it.
Say aye, sorry, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes.
Okay, there's a whole bunch of reasons the lawyer suggested that we do not allow it. It was their recommendation that we say no, as the policy states. The unforeseen potential lawsuits that it opens up if we open it up. One of the big concerns is if we get a student from outside that needs special care through any of one-on-one counseling or any of that type of thing, we would have to provide those services. So I think it just opens up a lot of potential. Right? So,
The only comment I would add to that is if we had students in the system that require that, we would need to provide those services.
Yep.
And they're town residents.
Yeah, yes, they're town residents, they are young people in our community who are seeking, to be included in some activities in the school that maybe they cannot, for some, whatever reason, again, it can be a broad spectrum of reasons, they cannot or choose not to access. And if they're disabled and we have to provide something extra, frankly, I don't have a problem with that, because that's the right thing to do. These kids are challenged already, and, this might be the thing that would really make a difference in their lives.
This more inclusive statement or motion was created by Superman Goodman at Dr. Szymanski's request, so it was written up with, a lot of thought.
Which thing was in
The second
the
version, the
longer,
longer
that's
version.
what I thought you were saying, this one here, yes.
What this,
Good point.
so what this does, the pieces that you're weighing, is whether or not the board is making a definitive statement to say, we want to rule out any potential for litigation and say no to everything, and then we are treating everybody equal.
It's not just litigation, it's added expense. So in as much.
I think the litigation's the bigger
Litigation is
expense
a bigger
piece.
one, obviously, but there's always a potential for cost.
But so the other piece is, if you go to the policy that puts it under administrative regulations and asks the administration to make basically judgment calls student by student, as far as are we going to allow the student to participate in activity, what you do is you open the administration up for having to make that decision without it being discriminatory. Now it's the administration's job to figure out, am I discriminating, am I not discriminating based on entry. And there are specific examples that are provided in the document as far as context in terms of what types of situations can come up that can become problematic for the district.
The only comment I would share, and I'm sure my colleague from Mr. O'Connor will agree with me, I haven't always been so warm and fuzzy with some of the legal advice we've been getting over the last couple of years, and somebody who's had the distinct privilege or maybe the dubious honor of having to work on a lot of these complex issues. I don't mean to disparage anything about lawyers, but there's some important issues here about potential liability associated with discrimination and so forth. When it gets to the cost issues, it's important. However, sometimes lawyers given business information it can be problematic because their risk management perspective may not look at an all-inclusive point of view that like Carol shared with. So, but it's important nonetheless because it's real. So that's my 2 cents.
I think the point that Dave made is a very important one. The second longer policy was crafted by the attorneys who knew all of the potential pitfalls that are written in the letter. And this is, and I think I just brought up a quote because I think if we never, if we were so worried about being sued, which we all are, but we'd never do anything. And this is, I've got a quote here that says, if the highest aim of a captain were to preserve his ship, he would keep it in port forever. And that might be familiar to some of you, it's a pretty well-known quote, but, you know, I think our job is always kind of that threading a needle of acting prudently and responsibly, minimizing potential lawsuits and things. And I think, as David pointed out, this longer policy, you know, I think attempted to answer or to address some of the potential challenges in the longer letter.
I disagree. I think all it does is it changes the burden to the administration, because all it's physically saying is, leave it up to them to decide whether or not to allow someone to do it, so, which is completely discriminatory basis. So to me, it does nothing except take the burden away from the board and just put it on the administration. So it's a non-policy in my view.
And we directed the lawyer to write that. That wasn't his recommendation.
Pretty short policy, the person.
No longer.
But that's,
We directed him to write it. He'll write anything we direct him to, but he wasn't.
Well, they were also directed to give us, you know, what our exposure was and liabilities, and they did that.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, again, when you go down to administrative regulations, which we could very well agree to, you know, include in our policy, it addresses, some cases, item by item, some of the concerns that the lawyer expresses here. And a lot of this, they're not saying, this is what's going to happen. These are all the remote things that can happen. We're a school, we're in the people business. Things happen, frankly. And as far as liability exposure, OMG, there are so many things that we do in this school, inside and outside school, after school activities that, you know, expose us to liabilities. We were just talking about the tennis courts before, and, you know, there are things that we are in the process of trying to mitigate, but, you know, you also have to live in this world too. We just had a conversation about whether or not, earlier, about whether or not we were going to have our kids go on trips. And I think the thing that, you know, strikes me too is, if you have some kids who require some special care to come here, we should provide it. I think it's the right thing to do, it's the moral thing to do. And, you know, if they were coming to the school, we would have to provide it, or we would have to send them elsewhere, and probably at a very high cost. And I think one of the problems we have in mitigating costs like that is, you know, to provide in school and in-house what is needed to really service our community and the young people in our community.
I think it's the attorney's role, and Shipman is a fairly conservative firm, to write at your direction or our direction a policy that is, you know, does what the board ends up wanting, whichever way that goes, but also that is most protective of the district within that. So I think that was perfectly appropriate that you, and wise that you asked them to do that.
And if you want to go item by item down the administrative regulations, we could do that. I don't think anybody wants to sit here forever. But if you do look at the revenue,
You're talking about, we don't have.
The second one's not,
Still on,
we're just talking specifically about the first
exclusion.
oh, I'm sorry.
Exclusion motion.
Right. And I think your bottom line is,
Is this one also revoking? We can't talk about the second one?
Well, it's not on the floor yet.
No.
put it on the table.
Well, I thought it was just supporting information
Kind of is.
for
Yeah.
Kind of go together.
Or the
legal
decision in general.
decision. Because you almost see it reflected as you read down.
Right.
It's like, well, if you want to do this, then you cover
Mhm.
yourself by doing, this is part of the policy.
And-
That's how it reads to me.
Yeah, and the statement that, you know, they wrote this at our, you know, our request is, they did write it, but they wrote it in, you know, in a way as to minimize our exposure for issues. I mean, we didn't